Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host. Anyway, today's video is a video by Second Thought. That's not the channel, and the video is titled "What Happens to Rich People Under Socialism." As I'm making this video, it's currently Sunday, it's Monday, getting back into work, getting back into school. Let's see, who are like following the American dream and wanting to get that cheddar, get that bread. You know what I'm saying? What happens in socialism? What does socialism think of that? So let's see, or what does socialism think of that according to this video, I should say. So yeah, let's get started then.
This episode is brought to you by Nebula. If you'd like to help support this channel, and the deprogram, and First Thought, consider signing up for Nebula at the link below.
I like it.
Nothing. You want the honest answer? Not much will actually happen to rich people under socialism. They'll genuinely be fine. A socialist president wouldn't make Jeff Bezos eat 100 billion
I actually want to know exactly what the definition of socialism is. I don't know if it's gonna like say it. I have a vague idea, but I could be like way off. But if it doesn't say it in the first few minutes of the video, I'll actually like look it up and like say that. Yeah.
Amazon boxes until his little tummy explodes. We're not gonna bring out the guillotines and pull up Forbes on our phones. There aren't gonna be free Rotten Tomato boxes from a local organic farm dropped around town. In a socialist society, a former billionaire or CEO would either stay in their position if their workers think they did a good job, or they'd get voted out. Their salary and earnings would probably be reduced so that the gap between the lowest paid and highest paid employee in any company goes down. If they're sitting on a dozen or so empty properties and new housing isn't enough to satisfy everyone's needs, they may only be allowed to keep 2, maybe even 3. If they got wealthy doing something despicable, like dumping toxic waste somewhere, their wealth may be used to fix the things they did wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna look up what socialism actually is. So pardon me, guys. I don't know if you guys can see my screen. I might just put up the definition while I'm doing this in editing. Um, so it says socialism, a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned, regulated, or regulated by the community as a whole. Okay. How is that different from communism? Communism, a political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs. I would like to see a video on the differences between socialism and communism. I'll look it up later. So we could watch it together. But that's interesting. I think from just the preliminary reading is socialism is the distribution is done by the society, by the community, and communism ironically is distributed by a central government, not the people, where everybody is given as they need, I think. Okay, let's go with that.
And honestly, that's pretty much it. Nothing will really happen to the rich, as in the actual people. The category of rich will change, but we'll get to that.
I'm just liking the vibe, like the relaxing vibe of the video. I should add some like relaxing music and editing also. I might not, but I like the vibe.
Anyway, for some reason, a lot of people are worried that socialism means going on a rampage. And the first thing we need to talk about to correct that impression is that most socialists aren't dumb. Every piece of socialist writing that has ever existed is constantly emphasizing that individual wealthy people are not the problem. Socialists in general recognize that almost anyone in Bezos' position would do what he does. Same goes for Zuckerberg, or Musk, or whoever your favorite billionaire is. Exploitation and environmental destruction and doing just about anything for a buck is the name of the game under capitalism, and that's what we take issue with. Not that Jeff specifically is the one doing it.
Okay.
This doesn't stop what these billionaires
All right. I've watched some videos from this guy before, and just from the language he uses, like is what we believe in or what they. It seems like he is advocating for socialism or maybe in support of it to some extent or the other, and is not a huge fan of capitalism. I gathered that from a few other videos I've seen of him also that he's not a fan of capitalism, but I think he is more in line with socialism. Let me see. Let's see where this
are
goes.
doing from being wrong. But most of it is just perfectly legal, and all we'd want to do is change that to put an end to it, not to punish people. Just make the awful stuff stop. Most of us socialists take issue with the
Yeah, the the problem the problem I see with having like just like these broad ideas like capitalism and socialism and taking one side over another, I feel like it's ends up making a mess of things, a bigger mess of things in the long run. Because I think the best systems that work economically are the ones that are not just one thing. So it's not just capitalism. There's still some elements of socialism in it. There's still some elements of um okay, it's a free market, but the government also does things like public health care and those kind of things. I'm speaking for America right now because that's where I am. In Nigeria, it's not exactly the same. It's a whole different story. I could go on all day on that, but I'm speaking like for America, like speaking for America, but like this this capitalism as the foundation, but it's not just completely capitalism. There's like aspects of socialism in there. So like if you want it to be just plain socialism, the things that made those people billionaires, you're also going to get rid of it. So like the motivation, the drive, the economy, those kind of things. It's like socialism doesn't really work without some level of capitalism, in my opinion. So people need to be able to put their heart and soul into the things they want to put their heart and soul into. And some will be productive and some will not be as productive. But the people who are not as productive or who are um, who have less resources to them should also then be taken care of as whatever the constitution or the government deems as fair, and I'm speaking like a democratic setting. So I think that's the best way to go about it. But making it like a mandated thing that oh you can't have more than three buildings, and if you have more than that, I'm just gonna take one of your building and give it to that person. I can see how that could like lead to some other form of problems down the line.
system of power and wealth accumulation that is capitalism, not the individuals who inevitably end up at the top. To put it differently, there are millions of jerks out there that are just as evil as Musk, but who are basically powerless simply because, under this economic system, power can only consolidate in a few people's hands. And I can tell you're skeptical. A lot of people are worried about
I
what's
feel like I feel like that's in every system, like that's in every system of government or like even group association, right? At some point the power gets distributed to a relatively small number of people, like compared to the rest of the group. It just seems to always happen that way. Even it's like even like when like communism, from the little I know about communism, the idea, it's good on paper, but in practice, the same problem that capitalism has as it is good on paper actually like starts rearing its head, because capitalism should be a free market, but as another YouTuber I watch, Asmongold will say, like the first thing they do in the free market is to make it no longer free, and we have like a few big companies that control every other thing in that industry. So it, it's that kind of thing. So it's up to like for like government regulation on, okay, you can't be a monopoly and you can't control all of this and that kind of thing. Regulations that everybody generally agrees as fair, even if they don't, they're not exactly happy with it, but they're like, yeah, you cannot cramp in my style, but yeah, it's fair. That is fair, you know.
Socialism might look like after a century of Red Scare rhetoric. It also doesn't help that past socialist revolutions, just like the liberal revolutions that gave us capitalism, have often been bloody affairs. It's normal to be concerned about that when people like me talk about making fundamental social and economic changes. The history of big changes hasn't often been a series of peaceful transitions of power. I think most historians would agree that's never been the case. I will point out, though, that there's a tremendous amount of bloodshed required to keep the current system chugging along.
This planet's our only home, but we're not treating it that way. Greenwashing speeches and pledges are simply not enough. We can't.
It's interesting the kind of ads I get depending on the video I'm watching. But this okay, that's really good.
Billions of people are kept in artificial poverty when we have enough food and housing for all. Enough jobs that need doing so that no
That's a solid point. That's a very solid point for him to bring up, because yeah, there's a lot of people like in lack, in like this in desperate situations, and then there's also a lot of waste. There's also a lot of things that just go to waste. But if there was a more efficient way of, instead of wasting those things, gets to the people who are in a desperate situation, that would that would be awesome. But how do you get there in a way that doesn't cause more problems than it solves? That's the $1 million question.
one needs to be unemployed. Enough resources to provide everyone with healthcare and education. Hundreds of thousands of protesters are brutalized by police and army forces when they complain that life is too expensive and the air is getting unbreathable. Not to mention how gruesome wars are constantly waged for the profit of a few defense and oil companies. But even given all that, it's still perfectly normal to be worried about the possibility of additional violence. And that's why I want to make this video. What I want to clear up is the false idea that violence against the wealthy would be a part of regular socialist society, because it simply wouldn't be. The main concern of socialism is equal democratic and economic power, a guaranteed higher standard of living coupled with a more extensive democracy. In this system, essentially, no one should get wealthy enough to exploit someone else and become democratically unaccountable. Businesses compete, the winners monopolize.
It's making some solid points, guys. Yes, because like it is problematic when it's like, okay, the more you have, the easier it is to get more, right? So you find yourself in a situation where you have a lot of stuff, and because you have a lot of stuff, you're in a position to get more stuff and more stuff. So if there is no sort of regulation on how much stuff you can get, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You can see how that, like, I don't like the idea of the same person that sees everything I do on the internet is the same person that sees everything I buy. It's the same person that is in charge of the security and all the recording devices. Like, that's a lot of power for one person to have. So if there's not some form of regulation that is like, okay, um, pick something and stay there. You can't do it. You can't do all of this, right? So, you know, it, yeah, that's a solid point.
And oligopolize, and basic needs are gatekept while companies are given a license to destroy or appropriate common
Oligarchalize, I like that.
resources. The ultra-wealthy have an outsized influence in politics and in the workplace, and the entire economy is geared towards maximizing their ability to profit. In some cases, profit and human well-being go together. In most, not so much.
Mm.
Under capitalism,
Bars.
what decides if something happens isn't popular approval, but profitability, which is determined by how much employers exploit their employees, how wealthy or desperate their consumers.
And that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. Let me take it back to what you said.
What decides if something happens isn't popular approval, but profitability, which is
That is a fact. Like, and it's always been like that. It's like if like working in the having children work in the coal mines, it's not that it's not like people were excited about it, but the only time we stopped having kids in the coal mines was when we could afford to not have kids working in the coal mine. So it's like, yeah, we know it's killing people. We know the miners are having like a terrible way of life. There are a few rich people doing extremely well, eating with gold plates and like silverware and stuff like that. Like when they say silverware is actually made of silver, that kind of thing. Like, and there are people, the people who like actually mine said silver and mine said gold, they are living like very desolate lives, right? But we are aware of that, but things don't ever really change until it becomes profitable for those things to change. Hmm. I could give some more examples, but I'll leave you guys to figure this out,
is
and
determined by how much employers exploit their employees,
you
how
get the
wealthy or
result.
desperate their consumers are, and even how recklessly they can destroy the environment. The idea is to stop all that by bringing
As a matter of fact, a lot of working conditions would be terrible, and some are still terrible. But it will be terrible as long as the person who is in charge of it doesn't have to make changes. So if I don't really have to pay you all that much and you still do the job anyway, uh, why would I pay you all that much? So that's why we have things like, okay, minimum wage. You can't pay less than this. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't just have absolute capitalism because that doesn't work. And I don't think you can have just socialism because that probably won't work. And I don't think it's, from what I'm hearing, I don't think it's advocating for like eliminating a free market, but it is more like having more safeguards that prevent the people who have the most from acting with impunity to the detriment of the majority of people.
the economy under democratic control. To have workers elect their boss, or choose to restructure their workplace entirely based on their expertise in actually doing the work.
Yeah, so that's something I would disagree with him on. Having workers elect their boss, that's that might mess up, like, I don't want to, like, the hierarchy in the workplace that makes it effective. So if workers are able to like elect the boss, then the boss can't really do much to or against the workers, because the boss is now almost like at the mercy of the workers. So if they don't do their jobs right, if they're coming late or work the hours they want, and decide on the pay they want, the business might suffer and might end up just crumbling because there's nothing the boss can do. Otherwise, they just elect somebody else that they want. Only if you're now saying um, the boss should be like beholden um, to like maybe the government. So the government actually owns the business, right? So yeah, I feel like that's that could lead into some bigger problems. So I don't think that's a good solution, a good a good option.
To have natural monopolies and other parts of the economy controlled by a democratic government. To have some market mechanisms not guided by profit. To replace private banks with public banks, with appointed or elected representatives. Instead of a board of directors trying to figure out how to make workers pee in more bottles, a democratic council would decide the best way.
So like with the whole thing, like with Amazon workers peeing in bottles and things like that, that's definitely a side effect of capitalism. And like, okay, I want to make more profits and I don't want to have to pay anybody any a cent more than I absolutely have to, right? But the boss shouldn't be the one to determine exactly, shouldn't have complete control on, okay, this is how much I'm paying and this is how much I'm not paying, and that's fine now. And the employer has no say in the matter. At the same time, the employer shouldn't be the one to decide that, okay, if you don't give me a raise, I'm not going to work anymore. And because the bosses are their mercy, there's nothing, there's nothing that can be done. I don't think that will work either. I think the best thing to have is have a free market, and the boss will do what the boss wants to do to like make the business as profitable as much as possible, and probably not pay you as much as you might want to be paid. But that's where, um, in theory, you have the option of either getting a different job somewhere, or unionizing, or the government coming and making it as a matter of law or precedent that, okay, you can't pay your workers less than this, or you can't treat your workers like this, you can't have unsafe working conditions, you can't have sexual harassment in the workplace, you can't have this, you have to have this, you have to have this policy, this safety measure, this sign here, emergency exits, air conditioning, they have to have a break after 4 hours. Like, they could make those as, if you want to run your business, these are the rules you have to follow for the sake to protect your workers, right? So like checks and balances of sorts.
To use something like Amazon's distribution network and algorithms to actually benefit society. The point is, nothing happens to wealthy people under this arrangement. The rich are just not part of the plan. Not the individuals, they can stick around. But the idea of someone getting obscenely wealthy in this society seems pretty pointless.
Yeah, and the problem again is rich and poor. They are very subjective terms. So how do we decide, like, how much is too much for somebody to have, right? So like everybody is wearing a regular shirt, but what if somebody decides that your shirt is a little bit nicer than it needs to be, and there is somebody else whose shirt is not as nice? So, give us your shirt and let's give it to that person because you have enough shirts. You might not think you have enough shirts, but at what point, just, I guess you could say, you rank it based on the general public. So like, how nice is your shirt, compared to like the nicest of shirts and the worst of shirts? So everybody has, on average, everybody will be like in the middle, like, okay, the median like quality of shirts, while, so nobody is actually on either extreme. But I can see how that becomes more problematic when, like, okay, do you really need a $500 mic to do your job? When somebody else is kid needs to, have some surgery or something like that. So you don't have a say in the matter. We have decided that it's not fair. So, have a $15 mic, give us the rest of the proceeds, and we'll help somebody else's child. But that's the right thing to do. But I can see how that can be also be problematic because it's arbitrary. And don't think for 1 second that corruption and nepotism wouldn't bleed into that as it does into capitalism. The lobbying, those who like have a lot to, who are not supposed to have a lot, but they do have a lot, who are not supposed to be the most powerful, but they are the most powerful. Those things will arise as they always do in any 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 form of human civilization or political arrangement, social political arrangement. I'll put it that way. So, you know, I don't think having just one idea as, okay, this is the way we're going to do things, socialism, yes, or capitalism, yes, communism, no. I think we do what works, and we make adjustments along the way as much as we can.
and ideally impossible. As a real life anecdote, look at how the last emperor of China was treated after their revolution. They didn't off the guy, they gave him a re education, helped him understand why the position of emperor was outdated, and eventually he became a member of China's National People's Congress, helping to make progress alongside the very same people he had previously oppressed. He was reintegrated into a better society.
As you're watching this,
Some of the last old growth trees in rainforests across British Columbia are falling.
Some of them are over 1,000 years old.
In a future social
That's a different topic. Um, hmm, let me use Nigeria as an example, right? So Nigeria started off as a democratic federal system of government or republic. It's a kind of like a republican system of government that we operate, and it was democratic. We had elected officials and everything, but then a coup happened, and a lot of like military personnel and another coup, another coup. We had a lot of coup d'etats on our hands. So the military people who were in charge, right? They were like, ruling Nigeria, my country, with an iron fist. But long story short, they decided, let's go back to a democratic system of government. So, let's, re-educate and get like bring those people back into society. So they traded, we had our elections and everything. And would you guess those military leaders that were like the all the key players in the previous schools were the same people that ended up being in the Senate and leading the political parties and becoming president. Even up till this day, we still have the same people that were involved during those times are still the ones with most of the power till now. So I don't think China, like, not killing their emperor, but now is like the leader of a political party. I don't think that's a good argument that therefore China has become a better place because it doesn't longer have an emperor and the guy has listened to reason and decided to step down, and all the totalitarian tendencies and tyrannical tendencies he had, those are all gone because of the re-education, of course. And then he's a functional member of society right now, and he's just leading a major political party in China. And China is not really known for its democratic behaviors as of right now, as far as I know. As an outsider, I'm just saying.
system, the rich and powerful themselves would be fine. But most of the privileges and access to power that create billionaire levels of wealth just wouldn't exist. The
It
only
will
way to become
exist.
incredibly wealthy
It will exist. It's not supposed to exist on paper. It's not supposed to lead into that, but it will, because it always does. Are we just gonna like burn every single like $3 billion yacht and nobody is ever gonna be it again? No, someone's gonna find a way to have it. It's gonna be somewhere offshore, and anybody that complains about it, you know, either their complaints will be ineffective, or they might just be put out of commission by some mysterious circumstances or some blatant circumstances, even depending on how things play out. Yeah, but yeah, yeah. In as much as there's going to be somebody or people responsible for enforcing the laws of socialism, there's eventually going to be somebody within that enforcement structure that will have a nice yacht like that. And other people who want to be in their favor will also like do things. And then there will be a few more people. It will go back to being a form of oligarchy. Oligarchical, I forgot the way you said it. It's going to be it's going to end up being some form of oligarchy. Even capitalism, it ends up as some form of oligarchy. It's like almost every food brand kind of like, it's democratic, but Nestle controls most of it. Like online shopping, yeah, it's democratic, but Amazon is controlling most of it. Like Google is a verb now. It's like I'm going to Google it. Technically, other companies should be able to come up with their own internet servers, but hey, it's always ends up in some form of oligarchy, and I think it's inevitable.
Wealthy in a socialist society is to have a unique set of skills, the way an actor or an athlete becomes incredibly wealthy under capitalism. Being basically irreplaceable might command a higher price for your labor.
Yeah, and this is a whole separate. I'm not going to go into detail on this, but even how we decide who gets paid what is also a different thing. So it's like, how do you decide how much an actor should be paid, right? So it's subjective. It's like, oh, yeah, this is a wonderful performance. Let's give them $1 billion, and let's say like a doctor or a teacher, like, yeah, we appreciate their service, but a police officer, we appreciate your service. Thank you for your service. We're not gonna give you all that money, though. So the way we decide who gets paid what, that's a whole different story entirely. But yeah, they all
But
link.
even then, you'd still end up with a much more equal society. Some inequality might still persist, but at a much different scale and within a much, much smaller range. The difference between capitalism and socialism is that you wouldn't be able to get wealthy by paying workers less than the amount they bring in for your company. You couldn't gain wealth.
Yeah, so instead of yes, I agree with him, right? But at the same time, I don't, because instead of I my point my point of discord is like on those big ideas of socialism, right? Instead of like fighting for socialism to take the place of what is currently, yeah, how about just advocating for avenues that you can't do that, which has been done. In most jobs, you can't pay somebody $2 an hour. You can't hire kids for certain kinds of jobs, because they're actually lobbying against that right now. So that's a good point for him to bring up also. But it's like, people, we fight for the things that's for the changes that we want to see, right? And concessions are made and things like that in a way that is generally perceived as fair. So yes, I would like to be making $35 an hour, but if my boss decides, my $25 deal or no deal, I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I could work with that. It's fair. You know, so yeah.
By exploitation, and that's it. You're still skeptical. No
Yes.
problem. Here's another reason you shouldn't be worried about what happens to rich people under socialism. Most socialists are very anti-punishment.
I'm not even worried about what will happen to socialists under socialism, right? I don't think it's gonna be a situation whereby like everybody violently like goes to rip apart the rich people. That could happen because resentment and a well-placed us versus them narrative, it's a pretty good motivator to cause chaos, right? But I can see how that can be avoided. Theoretically speaking, nobody really knows how things will play out in real life, but theoretically speaking, I can see how that could be avoided. My 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 concerns are more like, okay, so after that, what then? So after we have socialism, after we've said, okay, this is what we're going to be operating by, how do we enforce that and keep that in a way that works and doesn't lead to the same unfairness that we're currently experiencing? So I think it's more efficient to advocate for the principles of the fairness and all those things that you want to see that is under socialism, and advocate for it under the current system, and kind of like incorporate that into something that works and gets better with time, than throwing the baby out with the bathwater and trying something new that's just gonna lead to another like things to clean up.
Just talk to your lefty friends and you'll see. Most socialists today are at the forefront of the restorative and transformative justice movements, as well as the prison abolition and anti-death penalty movements. The most famous representative of this socialist position is probably someone like Angela Davis, who's campaigned for all of these causes.
The prison abolition movement. I've not heard that before, but if it is what I think it is, I'm not so sure that's a good idea either.
For decades. The idea of punitive justice, or the eye for an eye logic that governs a lot of our justice system today, is deeply unpopular in the modern left, and one of the things that socialists are adamantly against. In parallel to socialist ideas about changing systems, we would much rather make crime less economically necessary or less enticing by ensuring everyone's needs are met unconditionally than by threatening people with a violent state apparatus. We would much rather strip people of their power over others and institute a more developed democracy that extends to the workplace than allow a few to gain power through exploitation and punish them when they...
Okay. Like, it sounds good. It sounds good, but I don't think things are gonna work that way. I don't think things have ever worked that way. Like, like defunding the police. Like, do we really want to? Do we really want to not have the police? Like, who are you gonna call when like the poop hits the fan? Like, we need the police, and we need the police to be funded. There are things that steps we take to like curb the excesses that could come with being a police officer, right? Absolute power cuts, absolutely. And if there are no regulations on how police officers can operate, and and those policies are not enforced, things are going to go terribly wrong, right? So we could have a conversation around having those accountabilities and those kind of things in place. But to just get rid of the police, like, if you want to get rid of the ability of a few people to control others, that is what is called a social contract, right? We follow the laws of the society we live in because we have agreed that, okay, these are the rules we generally will play by, and we surrender some of our freedoms to the government. So the government will protect us and will make sure everybody is playing by these rules, and they will have the power to punish those people who don't want to play by the rules. And everybody kind of like, nobody is 100% happy with every single rule, but we generally like, this is kind of, it is fair. We can work on this, right? And in societies where the rule that operates, the people are generally perceiving it as unfair, the living conditions in those places will gradually or rapidly decline, and that society eventually collapse one way or another. Things eventually have to change. So the social contract is very important, right? I don't know where the line is between absolute freedom and chaos. Like, where do you draw the line? If everybody is allowed to do whatever it is that they want, guided only by their own subjective conscience and principles, that's going to be chaotic. If there's no power for somebody to say, cut that out, stop it. You are not allowed to do that. If there's nobody with the power to say, stop it, cut it out, you're not allowed to do that, things burn.
They predictably use that power to those ends. Socialists promote structural change first and foremost, and are against punitive justice as a way to solve structural issues. The idea that this would just not apply to those who happen to be wealthy is possible, but realistically very unlikely. And of course, this isn't to say that a socialist society would be without the means to punish people who commit crimes.
Okay.
Historically, after every revolution, there have been elements, often funded by one of the capitalist powers, that tried to undermine the socialist project through acts of terror. This wouldn't be acceptable in a socialist society any more than it is in a capitalist one.
Okay.
those people would still face the consequences of their actions,
Okay,
whatever
that's
those
good.
consequences are determined to be.
By
But on
who?
the whole,
Hold
the
on, hold
goal of
on. That's a big point. I was going along with it, but like one, I like to see the examples of the cases where socialism were able to enforce laws that's against people who are not playing by the rules, and who is like, okay, those people, the people who are trying to undermine the power of the socialist objective, they were punished, but by who? Let me take that back, because I feel like it completely
socialist
sidestepped the
project
answer.
through acts of terror.
Okay.
This wouldn't be acceptable in a socialist society any more than it is in a capitalist one.
Okay, as it
Those
shouldn't
people would
be.
still face the consequences of their actions,
As they
whatever
should.
those consequences are determined to be.
Determined to be by who? That's the point. If is it going to be some form of police? Because then you can't say defund the police or the police is a problem under capitalism. That kind of negates the point. Or is it just going to be like um in Nigeria, we call it jungle justice, where the people in the community just decide this person is a criminal and this is the punishment we're going to give to that person. And they make that judgment and execute the judgment according to their own, agreed upon feelings on the matter. So in Nigeria, like, they could catch a thief breaking into somebody's house and beat the thief to death and literally set this is good. I don't even want to say like set the person on fire. That happens. I've seen it happen. Okay, on multiple occasions actually. It's kind of messed up. It's really messed up. Yeah, but when you don't have a competent executive arm of government, that is what happens. So if you're saying they were punished, they should be punished, but by who? That's very important.
But on the whole, the goal of socialist justice is to be more restorative than punitive, as we saw with the example of the Chinese emperor. I get that all this conflicts with the popular ideas most people have about socialism, but let's be clear.
Yeah, and I I really wish he would bring. I don't mean to be like dunking on the video, because I really think it's a well made video, and I appreciate a lot of the points he's making. But I have a lot of disagreements. I feel like there's a lot of like sidestepping and vague answers, and I don't think the Chinese society is the barometer we want to use for an socially and economically sustainable environment. Right? They are economically powerful, and the society works for them, and that's what it works for them. Then that's fine, right? But there's a reason why most people come to the United States, most immigrants come to the United States and not to China. There's a reason why a lot of people, if they were given the choice, would rather come to the United States of America than to be in China. I'm not saying China is a terrible place to live. I'm just saying, you know, I don't think that's the example you want to use to advocate for like a total change in the way a state is administered. Those gamers drive me nuts. The person who is playing it always seems to be making all the worst decisions on purpose. Ugh.
Don't mistake eat the rich sweaters for a policy proposal. With so much violence committed by
That's a crazy thing to say. I don't mean like crazy like they are insane for saying it. It is also a crazy in that regard. But I mean like uh that's that is not a mild statement. That that is not a mild statement. That is not a statement of somebody who wants to come to the table and make rational decisions. That is somebody that is advocating for more like a winner takes all, my way or the highway kind of mentality. Yo,
by capitalists and their institutions against the working class and the environment.
I'm not even sure how YouTube friendly this video is gonna be, but I think it's an interesting conversation to be had. So let's do this. Let's get into the deep waters.
environment. It's understandable that anger will bubble up and find its expression in edgy slogans. But as far as solutions to capitalism's violence go, eat the rich isn't one of them. Eating the rich without changing the system that reproduces
Wait.
unaccountable
Was that like an actual billionaire or millionaire or rich person made into a snack that people can then eat? This is not looking good. This is not looking like a good movement. I don't think this is the PR. This is the PR. Or maybe this is the PR that they would like to like portray, but man, yeah, yeah, I was kind of getting sold on some points, but
billionaires isn't progress. It's just a funny quote.
And
just in case some of you try to misrepresent
is it funny?
what I'm saying, none of this is to say that disruptive protests are illegitimate or anything. Civility and non-violent protests are a sacrifice protesters make. To go in front of armed police forces and refuse to punch back. No one should demand from those who are oppressed that they should continue being oppressed to stay legitimate and valid. This video isn't some kind of condemnation of all violence or an appeal to complacency. I'm simply clearing up the false idea that daily socialist operation depends on punishing the rich like many pundits seem to imply. The idea you have in your mind that socialists just want to bonk billionaires to solve the problems of capitalism is simply wrong.
This is a problem I'm having. I agree with what he's saying, but again, it seems kind of disingenuous because the pictures and the clips he's showing don't match what he's saying. Am I bugging? By any means necessary.
It's on punishing the rich like many pundits seem to imply.
It, like he's saying like, okay, people aren't like people advocating for socialism aren't like just advocating to get their way by any means necessary, and then there's a lady with a sign saying by any means necessary. We had like posters of people saying it's the rate. That is not a. I don't think it's, if that is a joke, then so I think you guys need to talk to the PR team, man. It's see, now I'm saying you guys, like I'm distancing myself from it already. Like, you know, I mean, guys, come on, man.
The idea you have in your mind that socialists just want to bonk billionaires to solve the problems of capitalism is simply wrong. It's not a solution. Ending a system that produces billionaires is the #1 goal, not hurting people.
Okay, that's the problem. I think that's the core of it. Like, if the goal is to, okay, you said it's not the #1 goal, but it makes it sound like it's one of the goals. So if the goal is to eliminate a system that produces billionaires, I feel like that is a good argument that the sign wasn't a joke, right? If the goal was to eliminate people being left behind by society, people being left in desperate, desolate conditions, being exploited and cheated with impunity, if the argument was to uplift those people and make the standard of living better for the people at the bottom, that's a different thing. Like, I want to help my friends versus I want to fight my enemy. They might have the same thing, like to-do lists, but they're not necessarily the same goals. Their interests are not necessarily aligned. So I'm not really trying, if I'm not really trying to help my friend, I just want to destroy my enemy. Is it completely different thing that me saying, oh, I want to help this person out, and the actions I'll be willing to take and the concessions I'll be willing to make will be far different than if I'm not really trying to help him out. Well, it would be nice if that's an after effect because he is my friend after all. I do like him. I do want him to be in a better situation. But that's not really my point. My point is mm, that kind of thing. It's a completely different ball game.
We don't want jerks with the authority to change our understanding of what qualifies as a toilet. The problem is the system, not the jerks. Let's be even clearer.
Yeah, but what happens when somebody decides that you are the jerk? What happens when somebody decides that, um, this toilet, like you say, you go from peeing in bottles to peeing in an actual toilet. What if someone decides, like, okay, no, that's not a good enough toilet? Like, why should we be pulling is peeing in toilets made of like ceramic? We want golden toilets. What if we say ceramic toilets are inhumane? I'm not arguing that peeing in bottles is good, by the way. I'm just trying to push the idea to its limits to see where it falls off or like the edge it's got. Like, I want to see the edge of it to see where that ideology starts to fall apart and to see if it can be propped up from those sleeping places into something that is more stable and more sustainable to build upon, right? So yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to do.
For someone uber wealthy under capitalism, life under socialism would be different. An end to exploitation and permanently rising inequality would certainly mean fewer privileges. Possibly or even probably a less important status. Certainly less power to boss people around. And most likely, less ability to enjoy excessive luxury at will. But that's probably it.
Yeah,
Less
yeah,
power.
but like that's it. Okay, so I'm not rich, right? I'm not, rolling in the dough. So, but at the same time, I'm not like poor, and I'm not saying that as um a way to like as a means of pride or self-deprecation or deprecation of other people or anything like that. I'm just saying it categorically as a means of assessment of my my lived experience. Like like there are things that coming growing up in a like middle income household. I think I grew up in a middle income household. There's things like living in a middle income household. I saw people who were rich, and I didn't even notice a lot of my privileges until I see people who are like in a worse off situation than I am, right? But it's not like I'm walking on the bed of roses. I'm still trying to make ends meet on my own too. But at what point does somebody in a more desperate situation than me get to like have some of my stuff as a means as like mandated? I don't have a say in it because I have way more than them, so it is only fair. So like you may be living a minimalist like lifestyle, but even that can be deemed extravagant by somebody even lower on, like we say lower living standard than you. So it's like
Less privilege, but a life that continues to be more than comfortable as the standards for all of society are raised. Accountability not to boards of directors, shareholders, and the market, but to a democratic workers' association. And perhaps most importantly, the opportunity to be a part of a new project that actually improves the conditions of our species. The thing all these billionaires claim to want to do. Under socialism, they could use that drive, if it's genuine, to really contribute. Socialism is the way forward.
so what if it's not genuine? What if they're not really concerned about the well-being of other people and they just want to care about their own well-being, right? At what point is generosity become a mandate, right? Things like taxes. things like organizations and like things that are in place to help people who don't have a lot, right? Those things are good, and I'm in support of them. I've benefited a lot from them myself. Food pantries have saved me through some, some really hard times. That I'm not gonna go in. Sorry, I messed up my camera. That I'm not gonna go into, but is it possible to go too far in that? Is it possible to go too far in how much of somebody's income should be redistributed seemingly arbitrarily? I don't know, man.
Even if you're a billionaire. Howdy, friends. I'm excited to announce that I'm recording this sponsor read from the brand new Second Thought office. That sounds a little fancier than it really is, but I did recently move the whole studio setup to a larger space, and I've got a bunch of cool stuff planned.
Okay. Do I have to point this out? I'm just gonna let you rock.
For the near future. Some of the projects I have in mind, and even being able to move into a new place like this, is only possible thanks to the support of viewers like you. One of the ways you can show that support is by signing up for Nebula. I'm sure you're all aware of Nebula by now. It's the creator-owned streaming platform that's home to content from all your favorite creators, where we can make the content we really want to make. To give you an idea of one of the projects I have in mind, the three of us at the Deprogram are toying with the idea of making a highly produced Nebula original series in a similar style to Blowback, doing a deep dive into an interesting topic in socialist history. But that will only be possible if we can prove there's enough interest. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can let Nebula know by signing up to show there's an audience for the series. If you represent what I'm saying, none of this is
My bad.
read from the brand I have in mind. The three
So basically, a summary of that ad read is, um, support, and I do advocate for his channel to be supported. Also, this has been a great video. It's giving me a lot of insight and forcing me to think about things that I probably wouldn't occur to me ordinarily. But a summary of what the ad reads, the way it strikes me is, if the free market decides that this commodity has like relevant utility, like then they will keep producing it, right? So that's like supporting it, showing that okay, we want to see more of this kind of thing. It helps them to sponsor it more and put more money into it. That is a free market. Now the exploiting of employees and all those kind of thing, I think that's inevitable under any system, unless they have checks and balances to make sure that that doesn't happen to the people who are under their authority. So basically, that's my point. Yeah, but yeah,
three of us at the Deprogram are toying with the idea of making a highly produced Nebula original series in a similar style to Blowback, doing a deep dive into an interesting topic in socialist history. But that will only be possible if we can prove there's enough interest. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can let Nebula know by signing up to show there's an audience for the series. If you sign up using the link below, you'll get access to Nebula, and you'll be directly supporting your three favorite socialist creators and all our current and future projects. Besides helping us, you also get access to a ton of excellent content from amazing creators, from Tom Nicholas to Our Changing Climate to Not Just Bikes. The annual plan is just $30 for an entire year. I honestly think that's an amazing deal for all the great content on Nebula. So if you'd like to help support our work and get access to the streaming platform built and owned by the creators, sign up for Nebula using my link below. It really does help support me and educational creators all across YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like. If you hated it, a thumbs down. You can watch my other content by following the links on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you.
Yeah, that was a great video. I'll give it a thumbs up. I did enjoy watching the video, even if I disagreed with a lot of the things he had to say. But yeah, I think this was a great video, and thank you guys for watching. It's been an hour, dang. All right, doses, guys.